Welcome to the December 10th, 2013 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda for tonight's meeting on either side of the room. If you haven't already done so, I would encourage you to please pick up a copy and follow along with our proceedings this evening. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, including under item 4, which is reserved for comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight. So if there are any questions or comments of a general nature, we will entertain them at that time. And there will also be opportunities for public comment with respect to the items that are, in fact, on our agenda this evening. It is customary for us to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point, I would ask everyone to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for joining us. And now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson? Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Newstad?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight, and those are our minutes from our regular council meeting held on December 3rd, 2013. Do any members of the village council have any changes, questions, or corrections with respect to those minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, those minutes are approved. Brings us to item 4, public comments. At this point, we entertain questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda. If any members of the audience have any questions or comments with respect to any items that are not on our agenda tonight, the protocol is to please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and we would welcome hearing from you. Are there any comments of a general nature or questions of a general nature? Hearing none, we will move on to item 5, council member reports. This is the segment of the meeting where council members have an opportunity to report out with respect to community goings-on and other items of community interest. We'll start tonight with Commissioner Jose.
I have no report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rankin?
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnett?
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner Durkin?
I'm not going to forget this time. Just want to remind those as we get closer and closer to the 25th of December, please remember to do all your holiday shopping, if at all possible, in the village of Downers Grove, because every bit of sales tax revenue you bring in definitely helps us out, keeps us with a balanced budget and able to provide additional services when those finances permit us to do so. So we wish you all a very happy holiday, but please remember to shop Downers Grove locally because our surrounding neighbors really would like you to spend your money in their town, so we want your money. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Newstad?
Thank you, Mayor. As we're all aware, there was a little snow that came the other day. I just want to thank the Public Works crews and everybody that took care of that for us. They did a great job. We are expecting a little bit more snow, and wanted everybody to know that our village website has a great link and update for our snow and ice policy, as well as warming centers and some other important links that you could use if there is any emergencies or issues you come across as the snow falls. So be safe driving, and please slow down, follow a little bit less closely, and pay attention when the roads are a little icy and snowing. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll just follow on that, and we have had some rather brisk weather lately, and so I would just remind everyone, in addition to being careful with the first snows of the season, it does seem that everyone forgets how to drive in the intervening months, and kind of takes a little while to get our snow legs under us. But we're also facing some really, really challenging and brutal temperatures. So encourage everyone to please be safe out there. We all want to make sure that we make it to the 25th and are able to shop local, as Commissioner Durkin suggests. That's all I have. That then brings us to item 6 on our agenda tonight, which is reserved for public hearings. And we do have a public hearing tonight. So I will begin with providing the procedures for the public hearing. We've had a lot of public hearings lately. This public hearing is with respect to the obligatory truth in taxation public hearing regarding the 2013 tax levy. And since you might wonder, why are we talking about this when we're about to go into 2014? It's because these are done in arrears. So we're talking about 2013 now. I would like to call this public hearing to order. This public hearing has been called by the Village Council pursuant to the Illinois Truth in Taxation Law to consider the proposed 2013 tax levy of the Village of Downers Grove. Notice of this hearing was published in the Downers Grove Reporter, and a copy of the notice and the proof of publication have been presented and are made part of the official record of this hearing. I would like to summarize the procedures which we will follow for tonight's public hearing. First, I will ask the village manager, David Fieldman, to summarize the proposed 2013 tax levies. Next, I will ask if any member of the village council wishes to make a statement or ask a question. Third, there will be an opportunity for members of the public to make statements or comments or to submit written statements or comments for the record. Then, I will ask once again if any members of the village council wish to make a statement or to ask a question. And finally, the hearing will be adjourned. So just in case you were following along at home, you'll now know exactly how to play the game. At this hearing, witnesses will not be sworn, and a verbatim written transcript of the statements or testimony given at the hearing will not be prepared. However, a recording of the procedures will be made on village equipment and retained until minutes of the hearing have been prepared and approved by the village council. So with that, I will like to now ask our village manager, David Fieldman, to present the item for consideration.
And as is our custom, I will hand it over to our deputy village manager, Mike Baker.
Mr. Baker, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. For those of you following along closely, this will seem very familiar and quite repetitive because, as you can see on the schedule on the screen, we've been talking about this topic as it relates to the budget for many meetings now, and this is just the next in a series of public input opportunities on the budget and the tax levy. The levy itself is summarized in this table. This information also appears in the materials that are available on the web in a little more detail. I should clarify that the figures here do not include the library operations portion of the levy. This is only village operations. So the column that totals $20.2 million in the middle is what will actually be levied. The column to the right that totals $11.6 million is what will actually appear on the tax bills, the number that after we go through the abatement process. And the abatement process simply means that we have other sources of revenue available to pay for portions of the levy that we are required initially to levy, but then can abate, which reduces the amount that the incorporated property in the village will actually be taxed to just that $11.6 million. That number has been consistent throughout the entire budget process, and again, that's why it should seem very familiar. There is quite a bit more information in our budget document as well, and you can find that on the village website. Pages 8 through 9 of the budget message goes into greater detail explaining not just the levy and the property tax portion for village residents, but also what it means to the average homeowner. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker, for teeing the item up. And as mentioned, this has been the subject of a number of prior meetings, which included public comment, but we are having another one. In fact, this one is required by law, but it presents another opportunity for additional discussion and/or questions or comments from the public, so we're glad to have it. With that, are there any questions or comments with respect to the 2013 aggregate tax levy from members of the village council? Hearing none, I'll ask if there are any questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience. Any members of the audience have any questions or comments regarding the 2013 aggregate tax levy that is proposed? Hearing none, moving right along. Any final, now that you've had time to think about it, any final questions or comments from the village council with respect to the 2013 aggregate tax levy? All right, well, all those prior meetings have really paid off. Everyone is immersed in the subject. And actually, all kidding aside, I think the information has been extremely robust and comprehensive as in past years, and so I think that helps a great deal address a lot of the issues and questions that folks would ordinarily have. Then, at that point, with no other questions or comments from any of those present, I will declare the public hearing on this item adjourned. Thank you. That brings us to item 7 on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to the numerous items on the consent agenda tonight? Any questions or comments from members of the village council with respect to any of the items 7A through J on the consent agenda tonight? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8, our active agenda. We have 2 items on our active agenda tonight, item 8A and 8B. First item, do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that would authorize the issuance by the Village of Downers Grove, DuPage County, Illinois, revenue bonds for the Avery Coonley Project, Series 2013, in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $6.3 million?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from the council? And we did discuss this at last week's workshop meeting. There being no questions or comments, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously and brings us to item 8B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary plat of subdivision for Dunham subdivision with conditions?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary plat of subdivision for Dunham subdivision with conditions as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item?
Yes.
Please, come down to the podium. We'd ask for your name and address. Welcome back.
My name is Chester Tom, 7205 Matthias Road, and I brought a timer with me to control my comments.
We have plenty of time.
Up to this point, we've tried to present a clear picture of the existing area and its surroundings. I've tried to put you in the driver's seats describing the character of the neighborhood. What if you lived there? What would be your thought process, and what would your reaction be? I've seen and heard all the analysis of typical townhouse densities, Highway Institute suggestions, minimum lot sizes, exceptions, and learned what a hammerhead is and how it pertains to a three-point turn. Many of these calculations pertain to exclusive townhouse developments. This is not an exclusive townhouse development. Basically, it's actually more of a hybrid. We are proposing townhouses right in the same area of single-family homes. So typical guidance of single-family homes only or townhouse-only rules may not apply. I've experienced the frustration of lobbying for the increase in width of the street by 1 foot and be met with resistance and opposition. We're relying on the village, the developer, and neighbors to provide some insights and guidance. The information session with the neighborhood was held on September 27th. Up until that time, all of the planning was done with the village planners and the developer. Since that time, 0 suggestions or ideas from the neighbors have been implemented into the plans. We've had close to 100 neighbors review and sign our petition as they have similar concerns because it's their community too. This is not solely a legal matter or an engineering exercise to see how we can fit buildings into a land area like a puzzle. It's about our homes, our neighborhood, and where we chose to live. The items that we're suggesting: a wider road to match the existing road width, reducing the scale of the 6-unit and breaking it down to a 4 and a 2, additional buffer zone to the single-family home, are all within the latitude of compromise. At the end of last week's deliberation, the mayor talked about appropriateness. In this case, how do you define appropriateness? You know what? Sometimes you know it when you see it. I strongly challenge if the existing proposal as is appropriate. We're certainly not opposed to the subdividing of the property. The request for the subdivision, we are requesting the subdivision be divided into more parcels so the buildings can more closely match in scale to the immediate area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, both tonight and last week. Other questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Hearing none. Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks. I'm going to be voting in favor of this thing tonight, but I want to preface that a little bit. Try to collect my thoughts a little. I think, appropriateness is a kind of a ridiculous question. It's too bad it finds itself used so often in official transactions. I think this development, if I lived there, I would probably hate it. I think it's unfortunate. I think that there are more things that could be done and should be done to try and mitigate the effects on the characteristics of the neighborhood that are going to change as a result of this. But that said, we went to great lengths last week to explain, and I think we all understand that this is a situation where the village has acted on behalf of residents to improve the potential outcome as compared to what could be done simply as of right with the existing zoning. And so, in my mind, this is a little bit of a lesser of the evils kind of a vote. I don't like it, but I also like the alternative way less. And so to that end, I'm going to vote for it. I think we should. I would encourage our staff, who I think has done a pretty good job thus far of starting to mitigate what might otherwise be done there, to continue to press for things that would be helpful in reducing the impact on the neighborhood. But I also totally understand where residents that live there are coming from. This is lousy. So what it says to me, sort of in a bigger, broader sense to this council, is we need to take a look, kind of an on-purpose, intentional look at our comp plan and see where, in the absence of existing petitions, in the absence of existing proposed developments, we might make the changes to the zoning that's there to reflect the intents of the comp plan forward. We obviously can't do that in midstream, but it's a shame. It's 35 years or whatever it was that this zoning's been that way, and I think that probably it's, given what you see there, certainly the fact that that same zoning continues north, it's borderline oversight that it exists to this point still. So I don't know if that's helpful or not to my colleagues, but I'll be voting for it with a whole lot of reservations and a lot of grinding my teeth about it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I, too, will be voting in favor of it because I do see it as a middle ground that exists between what the neighborhood is looking for and what could go there by right. And I think it's important that we can't consider this simply in a vacuum. We have to look at what could go there by right, with no improvement to the road, with no improvement to, or limited improvement to the stormwater situation. And we've seen it go from what could be one large building to 3 smaller buildings, going from 16 townhomes to 12, and I think all of these are important pieces. I do share the sentiment of Commissioner Barnett when it comes to looking at the overall zoning of this area. I think it makes sense that if a lot of these parcels are homes and single-family homes, then perhaps they should not be zoned in such a way that a townhome can be built on it as of right. So we, I think, should consider a village-sponsored rezoning for parcels that are there and any parcels that could potentially be subdivided in the future, so that we can do everything we can to protect the character of that neighborhood. All that being said, we are getting some positives here. The road is being widened to 29 feet. We're going to have the improved stormwater detention basin, and the special service area that is proposed will help make sure that that's a sustainable solution for the area and doesn't further strain the village's budget. So it's not perfect. It does represent a middle ground, though, and between what would be ideal, I think, for the neighborhood and what the developer could do. So I will be supporting it, though I don't know if reservations are the right word, but it's not with necessarily full-throated support. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Well, I'll just add that I suspect, and I don't know what the vote's going to be like yet, but I suspect that the fact that something far more dense could be put there right now without asking for any permission other than the ordinary building code requirements, is something that weighs very heavy on us, because someone buys a piece of property with existing zoning that allows for X to be built and then wants to build X there. It's kind of hard to tell them no if they're meeting all the other criteria. And it's not as though the concerns and the issues and views that have been shared previously from folks in the neighborhood certainly we're sympathize and empathize, but the parcel has been zoned R5A for townhomes for decades, and it was purchased and someone wants to put townhomes there. So looking at it in that respect, doesn't seem to be all that shocking that townhomes will be built on this parcel. I certainly understand that what is currently, other than the single-family residences there right now, it's basically open space. And for open space next to anyone's home to change is obviously a change. Fully appreciate and understand that. But it's also on the other side very difficult for, I think, us to responsibly say, no, you can't put something there that is exactly what the parcel is zoned to support. That would seem to be very arbitrary and not something that we try to have a reputation for. We try to mean what we say and then do what we mean. I suspect, and I also suspect that folks, the only thing they'll care about is not the reasoning, but the outcome. And I want to focus on that for a minute, as I suspect what the outcome might be based on the comments of two commissioners that spoke in advance. I've seen other situations where the developer came forward with what they could put up by right, and then there was also a meeting and concerns raised and issues, and then they eventually over time worked towards what would be viewed as the compromise being less than what the developer wanted, but also not what the community wanted, something that was, I don't know, Commissioner Barnett called it the lesser of two evils. I don't know if I want to go and start ascribing moral labels to someone's townhome development, but certainly something would be viewed in the neighborhood to be less dense and less of a massive structure than what would otherwise be there. And I sort of see this situation as one where, rather than starting off with the maximum that could have been done, which would have been 16 units, and something that would have been more consistent with the higher density townhome development that it's adjacent to this property, that they actually, through the process of working with staff and I suspect trying to be somewhat sensitive to the neighborhood, doing something that is less dense. It's only 12 units, and it's less dense than the townhome development that is adjacent to this area. So this is sort of, in my view, the compromise that they started with, rather than starting with something that was more dense than working towards a compromise, which we've seen that before over the last 10 years. They try to bring to us what is actually the compromise, if you will. Understanding that all compromises are ones that make both sides equally unhappy, I suspect no one will leave tonight happy. But it's also very difficult for us to disallow something that the property is specifically zoned to support, and in fact is less dense than what could be done as of right, which was pointed out by my colleagues. It's very difficult to try to do that. And the exception that's being requested is not one that I find to be particularly troubling, because as was emphasized last week, that exception is really one that's being requested by the village in order to support some of the improvements, the public improvements. It's not as though that the petitioner is asking for this exception or they couldn't do the project. This is something that really the village is asking for in order to support the public improvements that will be that will be constructed as part of this project. So that's why if I have a hard time and fully appreciate all the concerns and issues of the neighborhood, but have a hard time responsibly saying no to this, given the circumstances. And perhaps the circumstances would have, could have, should have been changed, but that's not what we face as we sit here tonight. What I am very hopeful for, and what I have high expectations for, is that this is a preliminary approval tonight, and I understand that when the final approval of the plat comes forward, the standard is, does the final plat of approval, is it consistent with the preliminary plat? So the preliminary plat is very important. But I have high expectations of both the petitioner, our village staff, and the neighborhood to continue to work together. And perhaps there are some additional things that can be done that might ameliorate some of the issues that have been raised. But in terms of not putting a townhome on a parcel that is specifically zoned to support townhomes and has been for decades, is something that I'm having a hard time being able to support without coming off arbitrary and capricious. Other questions or comments from the council? And last comment, I just once again want to thank everyone from the neighborhood for their presentations and keeping their comments focused and having a couple of spokespeople speak on behalf of the neighborhood. That's very effective and greatly appreciated. Even if it's not the outcome that you wish, you should understand that all that work was carefully considered and listened to very sincerely by all of us. And with that, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our active agenda. It brings us to item 9 on our agenda, which is our first reading or our workshop portion of our agenda, where we consider items for presentation and discussion and potential action at a future point in time. There will be no votes taken on any of these items. We have 2 items on our first reading agenda tonight, items 9A and 9B. As is customary, I'll turn over the presentation of these 2 items to village staff. Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. The first item is consideration of an ordinance establishing special service area number 6. Here to provide additional information on this item is our performance manager, Allison Deitch.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, Ms. Deitch.
Tonight I'll provide a quick summary of the SSA ordinance, which will establish SSA number 6, one of the final steps for creating the SSA that will provide a sustainable funding mechanism for fire and EMS services for unincorporated areas near the northeast border of the village. Village staff partnered with DuPage County and the board of the Fairview Fire Protection District to identify the solution, which resolves underpayment by the district, which has been limited by tax cap laws. The village took the first step toward establishing the SSA by approving an ordinance proposing the SSA on August 13th. Then, following a 60-day waiting period, the village held a required public hearing on October 15th. Based on feedback at the public hearing, the village changed the language in the SSA ordinance to clarify the maximum rate, which is 1/2 of 1% of the equalized assessed value. For a $300,000 home, this would equal $500. Next year, the village will levy $82,355, which includes the levy for fire protection services, as well as a one-time levy for professional services related to the establishment of the SSA. And this projected rate, based on the previous year's EAV, is approximately .0027. And finally, this ordinance will appear on next week's active agenda for approval.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience on this item at this time? Please. Good evening. If you could just give us your name and address, please.
Good evening, Jim Downey, and I live at 3701 Douglas Road in Downers Grove. And
Welcome.
I am part of the district, and I am a trustee for the Fairview Fire Protection Board. Just a real brief history in that I was elected last year in 2012 with another member of the board, and then the third member of our board, I believe, was the previous year. So there's been a transition based upon, unfortunately, death of the previous board members, but we volunteered our time as we became aware of an issue to try to resolve what we consider to be our paying of our fair share for the service provided. And it was a joint effort with the county and the village and the Fairview Fire Protection District to review options available to us to provide sustainable funding. And Dave Fieldman, Allison, and Enza were really very cooperative in trying to come up with a solution. So we dialogued a number of different options available. 1, to do nothing. 2, to be would take a look at providing an alternative provider or service to us, a vendor for that service. 3rd would be a referendum, and then 4th was the establishment of an SSA. And it's important to note that the SSA establishment wasn't driven by the village, it was just one of the alternatives that came up through dialoguing with both the village and the county. So as we as board members reviewed the process, the options available to us, we kind of eliminated obviously doing nothing. Secondly, to look for an alternative vendor. We did actually pursue that and felt that the options available to us were extremely limited. Lombard was one, but the cost was significantly greater than the cost being charged by Downers Grove, and still would not allow us sustainable funding. We did review and discuss a referendum as an opportunity for us, and we felt that that wasn't sustainable either, because going through that exercise would be time-consuming, would be expensive, and at the end of the day, there's no guarantee that the referendum would be passed, and we could still provide proper funding for the mechanism of providing that service. So after careful review and consideration, which included open meetings, meetings with the county, with the village, and our own fire protection district open meetings, solicitation of the people within our district, we really feel that the SSA addresses the issues and concerns that we have as a fire protection district, and I have as a resident. It is very interesting and sometimes frustrating to realize how government works. Is something I wouldn't want to do every day. But trying to come to a consensus, I think we've met all the objectives that we should as a district and as residents, and trying to keep it open and have a dialogue going. So I respect those that may not agree with us, but as a board, we agree that it's the best method to go forward, and really want to thank the village and the county for their cooperation in trying to resolve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. Appreciate you being here, and it has been a terrific exercise in intergovernmental cooperation between your board, the county, and the village, and we're happy to assist in providing a sustainable solution for that district. Thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this proposed item? Hearing none. Questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I actually have a question for Mr. Downey. I apologize, you had to go back, sit down.
That was my fault.
Just real briefly, since you identified yourself as one of the elected officials on the district, how did the district communicate with the members, the residents of the district themselves, if you don't mind me asking that?
I'm going to transition to one of the board members that here. He can probably explain it better than I can. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron, and Ron can tell you what the process we went through, the response rates that we got, and so forth. So I'll give it to Ron.
I appreciate that. Because we do have one of your residents who's been real active with questioning us and bringing ideas to our table, so.
I'm sorry, you believe I am the resident?
No.
Okay, I just want to get that
One
clear.
gentleman in the audience.
That was called a transition comment
Yes.
to allow you to get up to the podium.
Not you at all. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Ron Paprocki at 3806 Sterling Road, also a board member of the district. There were a couple different things that we did to communicate to the residents. Probably the most widespread was that we printed and distributed to each household a flyer that we ran past the folks at the village that summarized the history, the alternatives that we've explored, and what we believe would be the impact of the solution. In addition to that, we had a series of open meetings. The most widely or most greatly attended meeting was in early June, where we filled a room, basically. We had a much greater turnout than we anticipated to explore and discuss the issues that were on people's minds. We believe that we answered most of the questions. We were asked some questions we didn't have the answers of that we subsequently investigated and discovered the answers, shared that information with all interested residents in the district. Our district is one area that would be involved in this SSA. There's another district that's not part of the Fairview Fire Protection District that has been direct billed for fire protection services, also in the northeast section of the village. So their issues are slightly different than the issues of the folks in the district. But we believe that we've communicated openly, in a very transparent manner, and I know that that sometimes is difficult for others to do, but we thought that was critically important. Heck, we're residents there. I mean, we're neighbors of the people that we're trying to make decisions based on the best interest of all the residents of the district. So we think those two primary means of communication, in addition to email communications that were circulated to a growing number of folks that are jumping on that list, just to respond to questions or issues and hopefully counteract some of the information that might be misinformation that's being distributed. We're just trying our best to keep this as open and straightforward as possible.
Can you comment on response rates from our initial review?
Yes, I can. We distributed those flyers, and each flyer included a ballot, and we just asked individuals to please cast that ballot. Out of all those who responded, over 90% of those were in favor of the SSA, which we presented to the village and to the county as well.
Great. Well, I really appreciate that. That really illustrates your effort of getting the communication out and especially working, coming before our staff and working with us. I really appreciate that, and I see no reason not to be supporting this, so I do appreciate your time and energy that you put into this, and especially presenting all this information to us tonight.
Sure, we appreciate your support. Before I sit down, are there any other questions?
Not for me.
Any other questions from the council for Mr. Paprocki or Mr. Downey? As long as they're still in
Thank
front
you.
of them.
I think he had something to say.
Thank you.
And just to clarify a couple of things, one of the initial concerns was the rate, and there was confusion on the rate, and I think we clarified that. Another area you mentioned that there are some concerned citizens was the concept that this year would be an $82,000 tax bill on previous years where it was a $15,000 tax bill. But what's not fair in that comparison is that the current bill includes people that are currently direct billed are now in that number. People that were non-billed are now in that number. So we're kind of comparing apples and oranges. So, we felt we were about half funded for our obligation. The rate published is consistent with what Dave and his staff had always said it would be. So I think some of the misinformation is when you try to compare those numbers and not recognizing what they truly represent. The other thing, it was the county that required us to seek a level of support prior to their allowing or authorizing the SSA to be written. So that was another step in process that we did go through that was important. So I think we were very transparent throughout it. So I just wanted to clarify those issues. Thank you.
Thank you for doing so. Thank you both for being here. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Staff?
Just a comment, I think this is the right thing to do. I will be supporting it next week. But it's a good indicator of what's to come, I hope, as we look at the right municipality providing the right service at the right location. This is just a small step into what I think we all are looking forward to, making sure that we take care of duplicity that's out there, redundancy. So this is a good step forward for not only our village, but for the county. This will get the protection that these folks need, which is really the main goal of this, is to make sure that there's fire service for that area. And I think this will do it in the right way and in a responsible way. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Terrific. On to item 9A, I'm sorry, 9B, excuse me.
Which is an ordinance amending parking restrictions on Washington Street. And here to present information on this item is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Good evening, Ann.
Good evening. This ordinance, has been prepared to amend a section of the village code that will allow 2-hour parking on the east side of Washington Street between Maple and Curtis. And this is basically a cleanup item. It is the way that this area was striped and signed following the work that was done this summer. We were able to realign the left turn lane into the parking deck and the island there in a way that allowed us to have continuous parking along the east side and add 3 additional parking spaces there. So this item will provide continuity between the code and what's signed and striped, and will allow us to enforce the current parking regulations there. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Short presentation, thank you. Well, I may have a question for you in a little bit, but that's another item.
That ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you very much. Dan, I should have said, you may or may not want to weigh in on this. That brings us to item 10, the mayor's report. The only thing I want to raise is, as everyone knows, I also sit on the DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Committee as a representative of District 3. And I meant to mention this last week, and I overlooked it. My apologies. So hopefully this information is still current. But as everyone probably knows, there's a current remapping of the proposed floodplain in DuPage County that is going on. And the report that we received from the committee last week from county staff is that comments regarding the county's proposed floodplain mapping effort have been received for most of the affected communities within DuPage County. There have been a number of different comments from various communities with respect to what the initial proposed map looked like. Different communities had differences of opinion with respect to what that map ought to look like. I know our staff has been working with county staff to provide our input and our comments. My understanding is that there are no dates, or at least as of last week, there were no dates that had been set for the issuance of preliminary maps by the Illinois State Water Survey. But the municipalities that are still not satisfied with the proposed map will have 2 more public comment periods afterwards to raise questions and concerns before it's finally adopted by FEMA. I just want to update everyone on that because I know periodically we get questions from residents who may or may not be interested or affected by the proposed floodplain remapping effort, and I just want to let everyone know that's what the status was. My only question was for Nan was whether there was any more recent information than this was, which is about a week old. I suspect not. Then no need to comment. I just wanted to share that update with the public and also with my colleagues in the Village Council. And that's all I had for the mayor's report. It brings us to item 11, manager's report. Mr. Fieldman?
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to item 12, village attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca?
Thank you, Mayor. I have several items to present tonight. The first is the 2013 aggregate tax levy ordinance, an ordinance establishing special service area number 6 in the Village of Downers Grove. Ordinances for the levying of taxes for fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2013 for special service areas number 2, 4, 5, and 6. Ordinances abating a portion of the 2013 tax levy related to the general obligation bond Series 2007, Series 2008A, Series 2008B, Series 2009, Series 2010, Series 2010B, Series 2012, and Series 2013A, and an ordinance amending parking restrictions on Washington Street from Maple to Curtis. All of these will appear on next week's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 13, council member new business. Do any members of the Village Council have any items of new business they would like to raise or share with their colleagues? Hearing none, that brings us to item 14, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you and good night. Stay warm.